welcome everybody. This is going to be great. I'm very excited because what we're going to talk about is something that a lot of you are facing, which is that you have something going at your companies, meaning you've got, you have experience in sales. You might even have a couple of salespeople working, maybe even SDRs, but you realize that marketing is needed to take your game to the next level. And you don't necessarily have a marketing leader on board. You might have a marketing assistant, which by our definition would put you in one of these, the first two stages, meaning you are completely sales-led with zero or minimal marketing, or you have some sort of marketing support going on. And you know that the cream in the pudding, or as they say, like the real juice in the game, is when you get marketing to support and even lead some parts of growth. And so you are looking to get to stages 4 or even 5 in marketing. But the question is, how do you do that? Because, oftentimes what happens is that you have experience in sales, you might have decades of business experience, but you don't quite know where to start when you're building out marketing. And when you go online and you try to look for information and you start talking to people, you are confronted with a bunch of hype. So there's like all this information out there, seemingly conflicting. A lot of it is hype, some of it is good, and this just leaves you confused because you don't know where to start. Okay, so if that's your situation, then today's session is gonna be for you. How does that sound? Zoli, how was this for an introduction?
I think you nailed it.
This is what we're here for, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay.
What we're trying to talk about.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're just going to have, as you can see, we'll have like 2 slides and that's about it, because the rest is going to be about case studies, about actual cases through which you can learn a lot more than if we were just to talk in general terms. So again, what we're doing is, let's say we've got operations going and you say you want marketing and you are a B2B company, presumably with a high ACV product or service. And so some of the questions we see people asking in this situation is what you see on the left here. Okay, because often if you go online, then you see this debate about brand versus content. So a lot of people are convinced that they should be producing a lot of content, and that is the role of marketing, which is a partial truth, but not the complete truth. And it should not be the first question to ask. People who prefer brand, coming from a more brand-ish background, or if, let's say, the executives have worked for large organizations and multinationals, then they will have seen from close up that big companies tend to put a lot of focus on brands. So they invest a lot in, the image of the company, in the visuals, in the look and feel and everything. But this sort of marketing doesn't really get you off the ground when you are a small or medium-sized business. You do need it. You do need branding, but it's going to be in a different way. So not in the way that big multinational brands are doing it. Okay. So again, it's not a good question to ask, because the answer to that is a little bit of both or a lot of both, but not in the way that we put this question. Okay, the other thing, it seems to be a legit question and totally logical, is like, okay, now we're gathering leads one way or another. So if you're a sales-led organization, you probably have salespeople going in different places, talking to people, trade shows, conferences, whatever. You might even have a website through which some inbound leads are dropping in, and then it's given to sales, and it's a pure 100% sales process after that. So a natural question from sales is, okay, like, how is marketing going to help us deliver leads? Now, this is the wrong question to ask, in our opinion, because if you're asking that, then what you think about marketing is this. It's what stage 3 is, which is basically inbound and lead generation. So marketing is supposed to just generate leads so that they can hand it off to sales. And then that's pretty much all that marketing does, besides a little bit of education. Okay. It's not wrong, but it's just not the right focus in 2022, in our opinion. Okay. So again, not the right question to ask. Getting leads is certainly part of the game. It's certainly part of the process, but it's not among the first questions which you should be asking. Okay, now the last one that you see on the left is, should we do X? Meaning, and X can be any strategy: SEO, blogging, content, video, social media, thought leadership, ABM, buy an ABM platform or whatever. Again, that should not be the first question, or even part of the first, because you don't have a strategy yet. And your strategy and your resources are going to dictate what sort of plays and tactics you should be executing on in the coming 90 days and 360 days. Okay, so should we do blogging or any other fad? Should we do demand generation, or I don't know, insert anything that you hear or see or read online? Like, that's not the question you should be asking at this point. Okay, now what is it then that you should be thinking about and talking about? Well, it's some of this. For example, who are my best customers and why? Now, that's a huge question, because what this does is it forces you to think about who's the easiest to sell to, and then who is the easiest to service, either with your product or with your service team. So no customer is created equal. Customers aren't created equal, to be precise. And you will have customers which are a great fit for your company, and you will have customers who are not such great fits. Okay, now what happens if, for example, Ahmad, in your case, you don't have customers yet because you're a startup? What happens if you're a startup? Now, if you're a startup, a variation of this question is, how will I find out who my best customers will be? And the way that you do that is you do some analysis on your strengths, on your service or your product. So you take a look at your product, which in your case would be a consulting engagement, involvement. And then you take a look at your process, and then you take a look at what kind of people you like to work with, what kind of people you like to get along with, what kind of organizations do you blend well with, because you've got tons of experience in business. So by now, if it's small companies, big companies, multinationals, or locals in your market, complex businesses or simple businesses. So there are a lot of factors that go into this, and you just need to blend these with the capabilities of your service. So you will somewhat you will draw up an ideal customer profile. Now, if you have a business, you have an existing business, and you have a few or many clients, then you will know, okay, we love these customers because of such and such. We don't like these customers because for any other reason. Let's say they take too long to process everything, so they are too complicated, and we like to work with fast-moving businesses. Or it can be the opposite. Like, we are happy to work with slow-moving businesses, with big elephants or dinosaurs who are moving slow, because we understand we can navigate the corporate politics very well because we have experience in that. Okay, either one is fine. It's just that you have to determine that for your early stage company, your startup or your scale up, like what sits best. Okay, and then once you have this, comes the question, how do I find and attract more like them? Because obviously customers are all over the place. So what's behind this question is an examination of how you got those customers in the first place. Now, unless you've been in business for years with this company, a lot of these companies will have come from referrals. So that's not really going to help you. So if they do come from referrals, and you don't have substantial data on where to get customers like that, then the best thing to do is to go out there and start talking to them and start to discuss like how they purchase solutions such as yours. So if, for example, they're looking for an ERP solution, what was going on in their business when they realized that they have a need for an ERP solution? Okay, so yeah, what did they do? Did they go to Google? Did they interview people? Did they ask a question on social media? Did they start reading white papers? What happens? So you need to dig out what was going on in their companies when that happened. Okay, and when you do that, you will uncover the places where your customers are and where they are looking for information. And you will want to cater for that opportunity. So you are assuming that if your best customers are, let's say, in Slack groups or on review sites, or they're Googling information about your topic, then you want to show up where they are. And ideally, as a second step, you want to determine the step before that. So you want to engage them like just before the conscious need arises, because by the time the conscious need arises, depending on your market, it might be too late to talk to them, because by the time the need arises, maybe another competitor of yours will have found them with their content and will have already started talking to them and giving them information and framing their mind and framing their thinking on how they should be viewing their problem and approaching it. Okay. So this goes back to basically the demand pyramid that I post that every now and then, where there's a hierarchy of customers or your market. So imagine a triangle, a pyramid, where at the very top you have problem awareness or super awareness. And that smallest segment is part of the market where people have a need, they have the money to buy, and they know what their options are. And so all they need to do is pick and choose, and they need to find a solution within, I don't know, 30 days or whatever the shortest time spent for your market is. So they're aware of the things, they are educated, and they just have the immediate need, and they probably know what they want, and they have their options down. Now, if you start to target those people, you probably need an offering for those people as well. But if you target only them, then you're going to be not very successful because there the competition is the highest. Now, if you go one level down the pyramid, then just below this small segment is a larger segment where people are aware of their problems, but they're really unsure of the different solutions. So, we mentioned the example of ERPs, and like, let's say they need an ERP, and they might know that they need like an IT system. They might be able to name like one or two brands who are service providers, but they probably haven't done their research and they don't really know their alternatives. Okay, now that's a better place to enter the conversation than the previous one, because obviously they're less decided. They're much less decided, so they're more open to alternatives, and they're more open to having a conversation. Now, what if you go even below that stage? Then you're going to find that the market there is even wider. And here you have people who are problem unaware, meaning that they know that they need something to get their business moving better. They probably need an IT solution, and they might even not know if it's just an IT solution or does it need like management and consulting. Is it a mix of both? They see that other businesses are digitalizing and are moving faster. They don't really feel the immediate need, and that's a key distinction there. They don't feel the immediate need that they need to get on board today, but they might be open to information. But they are unaware of the exact need. They're not feeling the pain, but they're still your target market. And this is a place where you really want to be present and enter the conversation. Okay. And so all of this relates to this second question: how do I find and attract more like them? And if you think about it, just to enter some buzzwords, these first two, we're not talking about lead generation just yet. We're at an earlier stage. And if you think about who are my best customers, where are they, and what do I need to tell them so that they will come to me? This is like the classic definition of demand generation, which is a word that you hear thrown around a lot these days. But that's what demand generation really is, especially the earlier stages that I just talked about. So where there is no demand, in the widest part of the market where there's no demand, you want to be the guy or gal who injects that new bit of thinking in their mind, and you want to be the one who generates that demand, who creates that demand. You want to set the agenda and tell them, how do you think about your problem? So let's say you want digitalization. So don't start with technology. That could be your line. Start with strategy. start with understanding your business and what digitalization can do for you. Go through this process, and only after that, start thinking about which platform or technology you need. So that could be part of. So what you're doing there is you're generating demand. Okay, put very simply. Obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that, but you get the picture. Stop me anytime, by the way, guys, if you have questions. And just unmute and come online. Okay, if we'll move on, then look at the third question, which is how will sales and marketing blend? Now, that's a good question, because oftentimes when we go into companies, we need to explain to experienced sales leaders and business leaders that, hey, you've got these stages here, and actually you can expect a lot more from marketing than just pure sales support or these like discrete functions such as SEO and lead generation. So you can expect a lot more from marketing than just that. You can actually, and you should be expecting marketing to take part in sales and blend with the sales department, which is what happens when you launch account-based marketing initiatives. Okay. And we try to frame the minds of CEOs and sales leaders to think that and to believe that this, at the end of the day, should really be one department. So sales and marketing should really be one department, meaning they should own collective revenue targets, and they should be led by one person, one leader. Now, in the future, you will still have separate sales and marketing functions, because website and all the classical marketing activities are going to belong to marketing, which will be like a sub team of this revenue department. And everything that sales does, like, I don't know, outbound calls and following up with leads and having the sales conversation, that's always going to be sales. So that's another team, but they need to be joined at the top, which is what is not happening at a lot of companies. But once they are joined at the top, and once you can picture how this would look in your organization, if it's going to be Sue or John, or probably someone that's not even at your company yet. But from the very start, you should be thinking, okay, like we have a revenue department, which is going to have a sales part and a marketing part. And then that's how you will start building from the beginning. And with the fact in mind that sales or marketing should be there all the way from demand generation. So like from before the customer even has a need that arises, all the way throughout the entire sales process, almost till the very end, because you can still support sales in their meetings, in their technical meetings, in the meeting number 26, and send account targeted initiatives to the decision makers in a company. So marketing can be there almost all the way until the close. Okay. And the fourth question we've got on the screen is, who should be the first or the next marketing hire? That's a good question. It's not easy to explain, and we'll get back to that later. But Zoli, what do you say we switch to some of the examples from our recent past? Okay, because obviously we set up marketing and marketing operations for technology companies and service and consulting companies. And so we thought it would be fun to bring a few examples without naming any names, but we could talk about two specific companies for this.
Yeah.
Can I ask
go ahead.
Before you go ahead with the case studies, or the success stories you have it, and this is going to be related to our our case, since like we are a startup, even we don't know our target audience right now. And you were talking about who are my best customers and why. And, this is going to be like for a startup like us, it's going to be more of, I don't know, what are the approaches it's going to be taking, with our case from two perspectives. The first perspective, is it going to be from our capabilities? Like, I wish, to go for the higher tickets and, for big companies and, to get good deals and big deals. But my capabilities right now as a startup, I cannot do it. or is it gonna be the other way around? That's gonna be, like you said, the strategy sprint, where we are gonna tackle, where is the best industry for the ERP, systems that, the people, is it going to be the manufacturing industry? Is it going to be the medium businesses? Is it going to be the small? Is it going to be the enterprises? So how you're going to tackle this thing in the sprint strategy? Is it going to be according to our capabilities as a startup, or is it going to be studying and making a research and analysis about which industry is the best that we can get into it, and to explore or uncover the best customers for, best revenue and best ROI, and accordingly, we're going to hire people so we can, get to that industry.
Okay, I see your two questions sort of blend. So let me try to answer this, and you tell me if it answers your question. So when we start working together and we start creating a strategy, we start with what I just mentioned, that we take a look at your preferences, your capabilities, and we try to figure out who is your best fit customer. Now, if you want to go for high ticket and big companies, and you feel that you are not there yet because you're a startup, then we're going to challenge that assumption, because you can go for high ticket companies even when you are a 1-person operation or a 2-person operation. So the two are not necessarily related, meaning if you're a small company, it doesn't mean that you can't get into large businesses. And vice versa. If you have a 30-person team, it doesn't necessarily make you better off to work for a multinational just because you are a larger company. Okay, obviously it helps, but we need to look at what your goals are, what your preferences are, what we can bring to the table, and then determine the ideal target company size. Does that answer the first part of your question?
Yeah, partially, yes, but so it's going to be the research and analysis. It's going to be on basically on our capabilities and what is the best for our capabilities. Is it going to be as such, or because I think we don't want to jump, like we want to go step by step, but of course we were going to be trying to get the best clients and the best, ROI or high tickets according to our capabilities, or is it like that, or how do you study it, or how do you make it,
Zoli, do you want to take this? Or I'm not 100% sure. I would have follow-up questions, but Zoli, if you understand, then you can go ahead and answer this question.
I'm actually interested in the follow-up questions, because I think I know the answer, but I'm interested in what is it that you're looking for.
No, just go ahead and answer that first, and then I'll come with the follow-up questions if needed.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say, if I understand right, what you're asking, Ahmad, is that when we are setting up a strategy, is it, tailored to the specific capabilities that you have, and whether we first try to understand what is it that you guys are capable of doing, since obviously with a startup, it would be much different from like a company with, let's say, 150 people in it. Am I understanding that right?
100%.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I would say that the idea is, it's not that just because you have a solution that worked for however many clients before, just because we did something that was really fitting. We do have obviously frameworks that we can plug in, and we do have the sort of plays that we already know that will likely work for a smaller size company and a larger size company as well. So I would say Dan always says this, and it's quite fitting that it's size agnostic. So it doesn't really matter if it's 5 people or 150 people. But of course, the idea is to first understand the capabilities, or I should rather say to understand in what sort of playing field the company is at the moment. And the idea is that we're not just doing something that we are dragging out 2 years. The idea is that we are constantly reworking the strategy, and we are constantly sort of tweaking it and defining it, or we are changing sort of the positioning of the company as we are going ahead. So when we are starting, if it's just, let's say, 3 people, but we know that those 3 people are capable of doing such and such, we don't necessarily have to, and we don't try to, get into competition with the largest competitors in that field. We'll try to find the niche that those three people and their capabilities are applicable to. So then later on, as the company is growing, we can then sort of fit the whole strategy into fitting that growth as well.
Yeah. Great. But the thing is, as we, I understood from Dan before that, like the strategy sprint, always they're trying, to get the best niche, for our industry, for, so we have better, higher tickets and things like that. And through that strategy sprint, we will know whom to hire and how many people we need to hire, or around our capabilities, of course. At the end it's going to be, so is it going to be like a mix and match, so to try to get the best of the ROI or the high ticket, to our capabilities, and to make it betterment, to better it always, in the processes.
Yeah. Okay. Like by the end of the strategy sprint, it shouldn't be a goal to answer that question, like, who will you need in 2 months? We will have a probable answer to that. But the point of the strategy sprint is to set up your next 90-day plans precisely, very precisely. So for the coming 3 months, you want to have a very good and exact plan. And then you want a general plan for the entire 12 months, for the entire year. And then what happens in the first 90 days is, besides creating content, we're going to test. So we go to market very early with warm-up campaigns and research campaigns. And you're going to get a lot of feedback in the first 3 months on the positioning that we have figured out, on the assumptions, and also on what tactics work and what tactics don't. Just to give you an example, I think we mentioned this before, that in some markets, inviting people to a podcast might work. In other markets, not so much. But we're probably going to test it, and then we're going to see, does it work or does it not? So I would say that, to figure out like what sort of team you need to build, I think like the earliest signs of that will come after the first about 3 months, because by then you will have done a lot of experimentation. And let me just give you an example. So like one result could be that, let's say we find that boosting out PR content and getting in touch with media is a great way to get to the decision makers that you want to get to. Well, if that's the case, then you will probably want to hire somebody who is strong at PR and who can do that internally for you. But maybe that's not going to be the finding. Maybe the finding will be that, hey, it's the podcast play, for example, that really resonates with the market. And then down the line, you will probably be looking for somebody who can handle podcasts, who has experience with podcasts. So that's just one example of a position. Does that make sense?
Great. Yes. And this is a little bit, it's experimental, and it needs to be testing. And I'm a little bit worried about the UAE market, about it, how it's going to go, But yes, I got your answer. Yes.
Yeah. But it's a great question. It's the perfect, sorry, Zoli, just one interjection that this is the perfect question, because I really wanted to come back to this. This was the fourth item on like, what should you be asking? Like, sure. How is my team structure going to be built up? And the answer to that is you start experimenting, and then you will see the general directions that you will want to take. So maybe video is not going to be a part of the thing of 5 or 6 months down the line. And then you would not hire somebody who is a video marketer, for example. Sure. But you might need somebody who is a PR marketer.
Sure. Yeah. Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, go ahead, Zoli.
No, I just wanted to say that I agree with you saying that this is a really good question. And it's also a good question because basically the whole idea of this episode would be to talk about how to set up marketing ops, and like what are the difficulties that business leaders face, or the challenges that they face when they're trying to set this up. And we actually often like to use analogies, which I'm not sure if everyone likes them, but I think they are really fitting sometimes. And I feel like setting up marketing operations is a tiny bit like, and your question actually really fits into this, is a tiny bit like deciding that you want to change your life and make it like more healthy, and like trying to find a personal trainer. And the reason why I say that is that, I'm saying, I'm talking about people who, let's say, didn't have like, a sport career, or didn't really have much training before. And the reason I say that is that I would say that most probably almost everyone has a general understanding of what training is, and what working out is, what making a healthy lifestyle is like. And it's the same with marketing. So even without having specific marketing training or whatever, you have a general idea about what marketing is. But then the thing is that now you can find an abundance of information about pretty much everything online. So if you want to start looking out and start to get information on how to set up your marketing, you are going to find a billion different articles, YouTube channels, TikTok videos, Instagram videos, and all of that, which can, it is useful because you see a lot of information. But to someone who doesn't really know which path they should take or where they should start, it can be a bit chaotic. And I think it's quite similar to trying to start to work out or get like healthier, because you find so much information. And the other similarity with it is that when you're trying to set up marketing operations, it's really easy to get lost in all of these really specific information on like, okay, what should I do? What should I be doing? Should I be doing SEO? Should I be doing lead generation? Should I use Facebook? Should I use LinkedIn? What is the best tactic? And the thing is, even before that, what you want to be doing is you want to set foundations. You want to have an alignment, and I would say a more broad understanding on what is it that you're trying to do. And the reason why I think that your question was really fitting is that you started to ask about like, who are the people that we should hire? What is it that we should find? But to be honest, as Dan said, it's much more fitting to first understand what is it that you can do, what is it that we can build on, build a foundation, and then these questions will pretty much sort of answer themselves. And it's quite similar to starting out any sort of training. And then your first question is, okay, what is the best tactic to whatever, put on 20 pounds of muscle? Or what is the best tactic to be the best pole vaulter? And you don't really have to answer those questions when you're starting out. What you want is you want to have a general idea, a general framework. And then as you are getting, more built up, as you have more idea on what is it that fits you, then you can get more specific, and then you can realize, okay, actually I want to be taking this path because this seems to be working. So when we say testing, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're just sort of throwing whatever random things at the people we are working with. It's more so as like a really high level educated personal trainer trying to understand what is it that works with that specific person. And they will obviously have a lot of frameworks. They will know that most of these work with other people that I work with, but since everyone will be a bit different, it's good to first understand what are their capabilities, what is it that they are strong in, and then build on that.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So just real quickly, the first example I wanted to bring up, the first company is a professional services company. They are doing, you could say, to put it simply, they started out being a lead generation company for enterprises. And since then, they have turned into an account-based growth company provider for enterprises. And when we started working about 3 years ago, they only had about 18 to 20 people, and they had zero marketing. And their vision of marketing was that because they were looking at McKinsey and the big five consulting companies as an example. So they thought, okay, if we want to be a consulting company like these, then we need to build like a real tough or a real strong thought leadership grounding, or a castle, basically. And then like everything else is going to be done by sales. So in their view, marketing was just a content factory. And I sort of disagreed with that, obviously, in the beginning, but I said, okay, let's start out on this path. I mean, it could work. One thing that I did warn them about is that it's very deceiving to look at a company which is 100,000 times your size, like literally, because I don't know, McKinsey and Accenture, like these companies have like 100,000 people on board. And it's very deceiving to look at them and copy their business building and their marketing skills for a variety of reasons, because these companies, they go through referrals. They have like very tight connections with industry leaders and analysts. They went to the same American universities. as their clients. So they have like real strong bonds from the golf club and whatever. And you just don't have that if you're a startup consulting company or a service provider. So your approach needs to be different than theirs. It has to be much more proactive, but you do have to learn from them. If there's one thing to learn from them, it's how much emphasis they put on really creating value and content and high quality content. So they have their videos, they have their podcasts, they have their articles, they have their analyses, they have their fancy graphs, and they're able to present it in a very entertaining way, despite of the fact that this is not how they get business, but they get business through relationships and friendships and referrals mostly. Okay. Yeah. So that's one thing. We started building a content factory, and down the line, they realized that this is very good. So our objective was to hire more marketers and for us to train them to create content, because obviously there needed to be social media created and other channels needed to be brought online. Now, what they did was that they were very heavy, because of their expertise and experience, they were very heavy on outbound. So they kept the content factory going, but it was like it was a nice backup to the very heavy outbound strategy that they were following, which was to knock on doors and try to get conversations with leaders from big enterprises. And to an extent it worked, but it worked very slowly. So the other thing we decided to do together is to turn on some account-based campaigns. And so what happened was that we started going in heavy on LinkedIn with targeted account-based ads, targeting specific companies and specific roles in specific regions, and having about 200 companies to target at once. Okay, so then the strategy was that we launched these ads, and when we saw that there's interest from these companies, meaning they actually clicked on ads, then we could assume that, okay, they are consuming our content, because these were all content ads. So we didn't try to get them on a demo. We didn't try to get them to download anything. We didn't try to get them to sign up. We just wanted them to watch videos and read articles, which was great. So when we saw that there were at least like 5 clicks from a company, then the sales representative would go in and they would try to get a meeting with somebody, with a relevant person from that company, from that location. And it worked really well. So the feedback from the sales team was that, yeah, this was awesome. So it really works. And you do need some budget for this, because we spent about $5,000 to $7,000 over a course of 2 months. So this is a test budget, but it was very good for this exercise. And again, this only works. This is another caveat. This works for big companies, because if you're targeting smaller companies, not these global enterprises, but smaller companies, then the way that LinkedIn ads works, it's going to be messier for smaller companies. So you will need a lot more companies. And if you're targeting just one specific region, like the UAE, this might not work because of that fact, because you might not have large enough audiences. But nevertheless, this was a good strategy. And by the end of the campaign, we could prove that, hey, these 14 companies who are in your pipeline right now, their first point of contact was our LinkedIn ads. So it was great. So now they're totally sold on account-based marketing, so much so that they are adding this to their service. So now they're really started to hire a lot of marketers, because they are going to be providing this as a service as well. And they are providing it to companies. And that's another nice learning, by the way, that this company, they entered their client's business with one service, which is essentially setting appointments. And then they expanded into providing all sorts of business intelligence and marketing, and helping account executives and making their account-based marketing platforms work. So like a whole plethora of other services are upsold once they are in the company. And it's been really pleasant to watch this growth, because when we started working together 3 years ago, they were less than 20 people, and now they are over 100. It's quite some growth that they achieved this way. And so yeah, it's been, so what they did in marketing was they went very slowly with campaigns. So I would have liked to move much faster with campaigns, and I think they would have had even more success if they were a bit more adventurous and would have tried more campaigns and not just this one LinkedIn campaign. But they really wanted to keep the focus on the outbound strategy, on driving outbound growth, and so that's what they've been doing. So that's what we would have done differently, but nevertheless, I mean, it's working for them and they're growing like crazy. So you can't say it's not working. Yeah. So that's one company. Zoli, do you want to summarize the other example that we have in mind, which is also an service provider, a development company? They're much larger in size. Yeah, we don't have that much time.
I'll try to make it quick.
Yeah, make it quick.
But I think the interesting part about this client was that when we started out, which was roughly around, I think like 11 months ago, we're close to, well, 11 months ago. Yeah. So in a month, it will be a year. But when we started out, we had, in their case, they didn't really have much marketing. They did have some stuff going on. They had, and this I think again shows how you don't really have to go through all of the stages. So like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you don't necessarily, not even necessarily, you don't have to go through all of the stages, because although they didn't have much marketing, they already had one revenue lead who was leading both the sales and the marketing efforts. And when we started out working with them, we actually just focused on one really specific idea, which was they wanted to expand what they're doing to other countries as well. So they wanted to basically build up a go-to-market strategy, and then also obviously execute it. So not just the strategy side, but the execution as well. And what was really good in the conversation with them is that quite early on, I think they understood that this will obviously take time. So, it wouldn't be just 2 months and a bunch of leads generated, but this will have to be built up in 6 to 8 to 12 months. But it would lead to them being able to open up to a new city or to a new market, whatever, and they would be able to hire new people as well. And what happened, which was, I think, which usually happens with a lot of our clients as well, is that we started out with something really specific. As we were building that up, they actually realized that a lot of other parts in their business, so the business that is local to Hungary as well, it would benefit from some marketing as well. So some building may that be content, or may that be just general alignment between sales and marketing, may that be the language that they are using, or how they are building up their cycle, their sales cycle. So we pretty much starting out from just one really specific goal of creating a go-to-market strategy and then executing that. We ended up spreading out to, I think, 3 to 4 different projects that we are doing with them, sort of asynchronously right now. And at this point, there's 2 things that are running asynchronously on, I would say, like a high level of execution, and 2 other things that we are building sort of in the background. So they are, I would say, on a lower level of heat, but they already have after the 10th month. So after like 10 months, they hired a marketing lead and a marketing, sort of like a marketing development rep. So someone who does almost like a sales development, the job of a sales development rep, but with much more insight, and then creating content and then reaching out as well. So it's just fun to see how, from a specific small scale project in about 11 months, and basically one revenue leader, and then one marketing assistant, we are now at a, sort of double the size. So, we have a marketing lead, specifically a marketing lead. We have a marketing development rep, and from one, I wouldn't say tiny project, but one really specific project, we are at like, 4 different projects. And we also touched upon like employer branding in the meantime. So yeah, it's just in 11 months, it can easily spread out. And obviously, I guess the reason why they decided to open up all of these other avenues was not that, the one that we started out with was going so badly. So we must have done something right.
Yeah. Now, one thing that we didn't get to, because it's a whole other topic, and it will be, I'm hoping, the topic of our conversation next week, is what to measure. Because one mistake that companies do is that they have a strategy and they have a game plan, and then they either don't have an idea on what to measure, and they won't know when they will be successful or if they are successful, or they set up the wrong metrics. So this is like very, very closely related to everything that we're doing, but you're going to have to wait for next week. And we're going to have probably Steffo Tiempon as our guest. And we're just going to dive
hopefully.
into metrics and talk about what to measure. All right.
Yeah.
Any more questions before we sign off for this week?
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. One thing, Dan, I have noticed about the video that I have watched yesterday in the LinkedIn, about the POC. I think the product, I forgot the name, that product something.
Proof of concept.
Yeah, proof of concept.
Yes, product of concept. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Zoli. So is it gonna be in the strategy sprint? That the product itself as a concept. Also it's gonna be like it's measurable there. With the strategy sprint. Is it gonna be, or is it a totally different subject, Dan?
It's not totally different. Okay, the concept of the proof of concept.
Yeah,
and what that is actually having a hypothesis and then running an experiment to prove it, which is exactly what I said about the first 90 days. So in the strategy sprint, we will have, I guess it's going to be part of it, because there we will have a plan, and the plan will include, okay, what kind of campaign experiments we want to run and how will we measure them. Okay. So basically, when we run those experiments, at the end, we will either prove or disprove the concepts. So in that sense, it's part of the strategy sprint. Obviously, not the execution itself, but the plan as to what we want to try and what we want to see as a result at the end of it.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Thank